I bought a voice recorder that captures 1,000 hours of audio and instantly regretted uncovering my family's darkest secrets. If you enjoy family drama and want to see more, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's go. Honestly, having him was the biggest mistake of my life. I should have aborted when I had the chance. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I replayed the recording again. My hand shook. It wasn't some random stranger who said that. It was my mother, the woman who raised me, hugged me when I cried, celebrated every achievement. How could she say something like this? But that wasn't even the worst part. A few nights later, lying in bed, I fell asleep listening to another boring family conversation. Arguments about money, chatter about groceries. Then my father's voice, dark and clear, jolted me awake. Remember when we tried drowning him in the lake? Sometimes, I wonder if things would have been easier if we hadn't chickened out. My blood turned to ice. I sat up, nausea gripping my stomach. Mom's voice followed, cold and emotionless. I panicked that night. If you'd let me finish, we wouldn't be stuck in this mess now. I tore off the headphones, barely making it to the bathroom before throwing up. Let me explain how I got here. 2 weeks ago, bored and scrolling through Amazon, I stumbled upon a voice recorder. Sleek, small, easy to hide, and it promised over 1,000 hours of continuous recording. I don't know what compelled me, but I bought it. Maybe curiosity, maybe paranoia, maybe something deeper. At first, the recordings were innocent. Harmless family gossip. My sister, Emma, complaining about her fiancé. Dad griping about his boss. Mom nagging dad over finances. But soon, conversations grew darker. The first bombshell was Mom's comment about regretting my birth. Then the nightmare got worse with Dad's casual reminiscing about the time they tried to drown me. It felt surreal. Who were these people? I'd lived under the same roof, eaten dinners, shared holidays, hugged them goodnight, and they'd secretly wished I was dead. I couldn't stop after that. Every day, I moved the recorder to a new hiding spot, under the kitchen table, behind the couch, tucked into the bookshelf. Every night, I listened. Every night, I wished I hadn't. I discovered my father was hiding the fact he'd been unemployed for months. Instead of finding a new job, he'd spent nearly all our family savings gambling at casinos. Mom, furious, planned to leave him. She'd already consulted lawyers, secretly rented an apartment downtown, and even transferred funds into a hidden account. My sister, Emma, sweet, reliable Emma, had her own disturbing secrets. She wasn't just fighting with her fiancé, she was cheating on him. Even worse, it wasn't some random stranger. It was his younger brother. Emma laughed with friends over the thrill of sneaking around, completely unaware of the damage she'd soon cause. Each revelation tore another piece of me apart. My entire reality collapsed. The happy family I believed in was a cruel illusion. Then, in one recording, Mom mentioned a name I'd never heard before, Caroline Bennett. Late one night, hidden safely behind my closed bedroom door, I listened to Mom speaking softly on the phone. He suspects something. I'm scared he'll find out the truth. A pause, then more urgently. I've kept this hidden for 19 years. If he finds out Caroline Bennett is his real mother, it'll ruin everything. I felt dizzy. My vision blurred. Real mother? My entire life was a lie. My parents were my real parents. I wasn't just unwanted. I was somebody else's unwanted child. I had a birth mother named Caroline Bennett, and apparently, she had wanted nothing to do with me either. The next day, desperate and scared, I confronted Emma. I cornered her after dinner, keeping my voice low but firm. Who is Caroline Bennett? I demanded bluntly. Emma's face turned pale. Her eyes darted nervously toward the stairs, as if someone might overhear. Where did you hear that name? It doesn't matter, I snapped impatiently. Do you know who she is or not? Emma hesitated. Her voice shook slightly. She was Mom's best friend. She got pregnant at 18, couldn't handle it. Mom couldn't have kids, so she offered to adopt you. I felt sick all over again, and nobody thought to tell me. Emma looked down, ashamed. They said it was better you didn't know. Better? I hissed angrily. Better to live with people who try to kill me? Her eyes widened in panic. How do you know about that? I heard it, Emma. I whispered furiously. Dad mentioned drowning me. Mom talked about poisoning me. They were serious. Emma stared at the floor, guilt weighing heavily on her face. I overheard them once, years ago. I thought it was some sick joke. I convinced myself I misunderstood. How could you not tell me? I asked quietly, feeling utterly betrayed. They threatened me, she admitted bitterly. Said if I ever spoke, they'd hurt us both. We sat silently for a long moment, the weight of our family's secrets crushing us. Finally, Emma spoke softly. What are you going to do now? I'm going to find Caroline Bennett, I said firmly. She might not want me, but she owes me answers. Emma nodded slowly, resigned. I'll help you. It's the least I can do. 2 days later, Emma handed me Caroline's address scribbled neatly on a scrap of paper. My real mother lived just an hour away, yet she felt impossibly distant. I stared at the note for hours before finally building the courage to go. When I reached Caroline Bennett's doorstep, my legs shook uncontrollably. My pulse thundered in my ears. What if she rejected me again? Could I handle it? I knocked anyway. A woman opened the door slowly. She had my eyes, my hair color, features I'd always wondered about. She stared at me curiously, cautiously. Can I help you? I'm your son, I said quietly, forcing the words out. I'm sorry to show up like this, but I need answers. Caroline's eyes widened in shock. Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears instantly filled her eyes. I never thought I'd see you again. Why? I demanded desperately. Why did you leave me with them? She shook her head sadly, looking genuinely heartbroken. They promised me they'd care for you. They convinced me I'd ruin your life if I kept you. I had nothing to give, no money, no stability. They seemed perfect, stable, loving. They weren't, I whispered bitterly. They hated me. They tried to kill me. Caroline's face paled instantly. Oh God, I never knew. I swear. If I'd known, I'd have taken you back in a heartbeat. I stood frozen, overwhelmed by her sincerity. This woman, my real mother, hadn't rejected me out of cruelty, but out of fear and manipulation. I'd lived 19 years believing a lie. Caroline reached out hesitantly, touching my arm gently. I'm sorry. I can't fix the past, but let me help you now. At that moment, standing at my real mother's doorstep, I faced the biggest decision of my life. Could I trust Caroline Bennett? Could I start over, abandoning the family that raised and betrayed me? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed angrily in my pocket. It was a text from Mom. Where are you? We need to talk immediately. My heart raced. They knew something was up. My secret recordings, my confrontation with Emma, they'd figured out. I looked back up at Caroline, desperation and uncertainty twisting inside me. Will you help me? I whispered urgently. She nodded immediately, determination clear in her eyes. Yes, whatever you need. I took a deep breath. I had no idea what I was walking into, but there was no turning back now. I was about to confront the family who tried to kill me, with my real mother at my side. I stood on Caroline's porch, heart pounding. The text from my mother burned in my pocket, but Caroline's reassuring gaze steadied me. If I was going to face the people who raised and betrayed me, I wasn't going alone. The drive back home felt surreal. Caroline sat beside me, calm yet tense. She seemed as scared as I was. We didn't speak much, just nervous glances and heavy silences. When we arrived at the house, the driveway was full. Mom, Dad, Emma, even my aunt's car was parked outside. A sinking feeling hit me. This wasn't just a talk. They were waiting for me. Caroline squeezed my arm. I'm right here. Taking a shaky breath, I opened the front door. My family sat in the living room, faces hard and unforgiving. Mom's eyes flashed angrily the moment she saw Caroline. You brought her here, she hissed bitterly. You lied to me my entire life. I snapped back. Caroline deserves to know what you did, everything you've done. Dad's face twisted in disgust. You have no idea what you're talking about. Really? I said coldly, pulling the voice recorder from my pocket. Should I play back the part about drowning me in the lake, or maybe the time you put antifreeze in my milk? Silence fell instantly. Mom looked pale. Emma stared at the floor. Caroline gasped softly, horror filling her eyes. Explain that, I demanded. Mom glanced nervously at Dad. His jaw tightened, but then he spoke calmly, too calmly. We tried everything to avoid this moment. We knew if you discovered the truth, it would destroy you. The truth, Caroline demanded fiercely. You tried to murder my child. How could you? Dad's eyes hardened. Because he's not what you think he is. What are you talking about? I snapped. Emma finally looked up, tears in her eyes. They're trying to protect you from yourself. Stop it, I whispered. No more lies. It's true, Mom insisted. You aren't just Caroline's son. We lied to protect everyone, including Caroline. From what? Caroline asked desperately. You don't remember because you were barely conscious when we found you, Mom said, looking directly at Caroline. But the night he was born, something terrible happened. Something unnatural. Caroline shook her head fiercely. No, that's impossible. He's just a normal. You gave birth deep in the woods, Dad interrupted coldly. You were delirious, near death. You begged us to take him. But when we got there, we saw something we couldn't explain. We found you unconscious. And him. Dad hesitated. Fear flashed in his eyes. We found him levitating, hovering above the ground. Objects floating around him. It was unnatural, terrifying. Caroline laughed, an anxious, shaky sound. You're insane. Are we? Mom snapped. We took him in, hoping we could contain whatever he was. But the older he got, the stronger and stranger things became. Doors slamming shut, things moving around the house. Animals terrified of him. Memories rushed through me, moments I'd brushed off as coincidence. Lights flickering when I got angry, plates sliding off tables seemingly on their own. I'd always convinced myself there was a rational explanation. Stop, I whispered weakly. This is crazy. Mom stared me down. The lake, the antifreeze. We didn't want to hurt you, but we were desperate. We thought removing you would stop it. We were afraid of you. Terrified. My entire world spun. Caroline looked at me, eyes wide with shock and fear. Tell me they're lying, she begged. I don't know, I whispered honestly. I don't remember anything like that. Dad shook his head bitterly. You blocked it out, but it's getting worse. If you don't control it, it'll destroy everyone around you. As he spoke, anger built inside me, hot and uncontrollable. Suddenly, the room began to tremble. The walls shook, glasses rattled violently, pictures crashed to the floor. Everyone gasped, backing away. Caroline stared at me, eyes wide with horror. You're doing this, Mom cried, panicking. I can't control it, I shouted desperately. I don't know what's happening. Emma rushed forward, grabbing my arm. Please stop, but the anger consumed me. Furniture toppled over, mirrors shattered, windows cracked loudly. Fear surged through me, I couldn't stop it. Then Caroline stepped forward. Despite the chaos, she reached out, touching my face gently. Calm down, she whispered soothingly. You're okay. I'm here. Her voice broke through the storm inside me. Slowly, painfully, the shaking stopped. Silence settled heavily. My family stood, horrified and breathless. Caroline looked deep into my eyes, firm yet gentle. Whatever you are, we'll figure out together. But you're not a monster. How do you know? I whispered, voice shaking. Because you're my son, she said firmly. Whatever's happening, we'll face it. Mom scoffed bitterly. He's dangerous. He'll destroy us all. No, Caroline snapped sharply. You've destroyed him enough. She took my hand, pulling me toward the door. My family watched silently, fear and anger mingling in their eyes. Just as we reached the porch, Dad called out coldly. You can't run from this. Wherever you go, destruction will follow. I paused, looking back, heart heavy with dread. What am I? I whispered. He stared at me, unflinching. Something that was never meant to exist. Caroline pulled me away, guiding me quickly to the car. We drove in stunned silence until we reached her home. Once inside, I sank on her couch, head in my hands. She knelt beside me, eyes full of compassion. We'll find answers, I promise. Suddenly, my phone buzzed furiously. Dozens of missed calls and messages flooded the screen. All from Emma. I opened the latest message, and my blood turned cold. Come back immediately. Something's wrong. Mom and Dad aren't themselves. I think someone, or something, else is in control. Please hurry. My pulse quickened. Caroline's eyes met mine, instantly recognizing the panic on my face. What's wrong? She asked urgently. My family, I whispered. I think I just awakened something terrible, and it's after them now. I stared at Caroline, panic surging through me. Emma's frantic messages buzzed relentlessly in my hand. Come back. Mom and Dad aren't themselves. Something's controlling them. I swallowed hard, voice shaking. Something's happening back home. My sister says something's controlling my parents. Caroline's face went pale. What do you mean, controlling? I don't know, I whispered. But I think whatever they were afraid of, the thing inside me, it's real and it's awake now. She nodded, determination replacing fear in her eyes. Then we have to go back. We rushed to the car, driving silently, each lost in our own thoughts. My mind raced, flashes of my life blurring together. But one memory, one night, stood out painfully clear. Something I'd buried deep inside for years. When I was 15, before I knew anything about my adoption, I'd spent a week at a summer camp deep in the woods. It was supposed to be fun, just another normal teenage experience. But it became the darkest week of my life. At first, it was typical summer camp stuff, hiking, swimming, making stupid jokes around campfires. But then, things started changing. Campers woke up confused, claiming they couldn't remember chunks of their day. People acted strangely, one moment cheerful, the next violent, unpredictable. On the fourth night, I woke suddenly in my cabin, feeling strange, like something was watching me. My bunkmates lay still, breathing deeply. Then I heard whispers outside. Quiet, sinister voices calling my name. I stepped outside into the moonlit forest. Shadows shifted around me, darker than they should have been. The whispers grew louder, clearer. Join us. Accept your truth. Panicked, I turned to run back, but my body wouldn't move. A deep, cold voice filled my head, echoing through every fiber of my being. You cannot escape yourself. Listen. In that moment, blackness swallowed me. When I woke, I stood knee-deep in the lake, drenched, shivering. The sun was rising. Camp counselors screamed my name from shore, terror on their faces. I had no memory of what happened. No idea how I'd ended up in the water. They sent me home, labeling it sleepwalking. I accepted that explanation because it was simpler than facing the truth, that something dark and sinister had touched my life that night. Now, driving toward home, it became painfully clear I'd never been alone. Something had been following me all along, hiding just beneath the surface. We pulled up to my house, heart hammering. Caroline followed closely behind as I stepped cautiously inside. Everything was eerily quiet. Emma. I called, voice echoing down the empty hallway. No response. The air felt thick, suffocating. Be careful, Caroline whispered nervously. Suddenly, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked pale, drained, eyes wide with fear. They're downstairs, she whispered frantically. I'm afraid to go down. They're not themselves. Something's wrong. We moved quietly to the basement door. Muffled voices rose from below. Opening the door slowly, I descended the stairs, Caroline and Emma close behind me. Mom and Dad stood facing the wall, completely still, whispering in unison. The words were foreign, rhythmic, and haunting. Mom, Emma called nervously. They spun abruptly, eyes glazed over, empty. You awakened us. They spoke together, voices cold and unnatural. Who are you? I demanded, stepping forward bravely. What do you want? My parents stared, unblinking. We are part of you. Born with you. Rejected, suppressed, but always here. My heart froze. I don't understand. When you were born, they continued in unison. You carried darkness from another world. Your mother sensed it, abandoned you. These parents feared it, tried to destroy it. But you cannot destroy what you truly are. Suddenly, everything made twisted sense. The lake, the antifreeze, their fear, they hadn't been trying to kill me. They were trying to kill whatever was inside me. Mom stepped forward, voice softer, but still inhuman. Join us fully, and we spare these bodies. Refuse, and their lives become ours. I trembled, helpless. Caroline gripped my arm tightly, anchoring me. Fight this, she urged desperately. You're stronger than whatever's inside you. I closed my eyes, focusing deeply, feeling a storm rising inside me. Memories surged, raw and powerful. The camp, the lake, my family's terrified whispers. But then, deep within, I sensed something else, strength. A small, hidden light buried beneath darkness. Something human. Something real. No, I whispered firmly. I won't let you take anyone else. The room shook violently. Mom and Dad screamed, voices distorting as darkness surged outward, swirling around us. Hold on, Caroline shouted, gripping my hand tightly. I focused, channeling all my anger, fear, and love into pushing back the darkness. A piercing scream filled the basement, deafening and agonizing. Then suddenly, silence. Mom and Dad collapsed to the floor, gasping, eyes clear again. Emma rushed to their side, crying, hugging them tightly. I sank to my knees, drained, breathless. Caroline knelt beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. You did it, she whispered softly. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The darkness wasn't gone, just subdued, waiting quietly inside me, patient and hungry. We sat quietly in the aftermath, relief mixed with dread. My family watched me cautiously, grateful but afraid. Everything was changed, irreparably so. Emma finally broke the silence. What happens now? Before anyone could answer, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, fear gripping my heart. A single text from an unknown number. You've barely scratched the surface. Meet me where this began, at the lake. Come alone, or they all die. I looked up, meeting Caroline's anxious gaze. She saw the fear instantly. What is it? She asked urgently. I think someone, or something, is waiting at the lake where it all started. I said quietly. Don't go. Mom whispered weakly. It's a trap. I shook my head, determination flooding through me. I have to. Whatever this is, it won't stop. Not unless I face it. Caroline nodded slowly. Then I'm coming with you. I hesitated, but her eyes showed no doubt. We faced this together, remember? Taking a deep breath, I stood, heart heavy but resolved. I'd faced drowning, betrayal, possession, every horror imaginable. But now, heading back to the lake where my life first spiraled into madness, I knew I was walking towards something far worse. Something darker than family secrets or hidden recordings. But I had no choice. This nightmare wouldn't end until I confronted whatever darkness awaited me at the lake. Driving to the lake, my head spun with chaotic thoughts. Caroline sat beside me, silent and tense. After everything, hidden adoptions, family betrayal, attempts on my life, I didn't know what to believe. But I knew I couldn't run anymore. We reached the lake just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Everything looked peaceful, utterly normal. No mysterious darkness, no strange shadows, just a familiar childhood spot, now tainted with horrible memories. A single figure stood on the dock, waiting calmly. Caroline squeezed my arm nervously. Stay here, I whispered, stepping out. Walking toward the dock, my heart pounded. The figure turned slowly, and I froze instantly. It was my father. Surprised, he asked coldly, eyes hard and calculating. What is this? I demanded, anger surging again. I thought something was controlling you. Is this some kind of sick game? Dad laughed bitterly, shaking his head. You've always been gullible. Something supernatural? Really? Did you actually believe all that nonsense? I stared, confused. You tried to kill me. You said I was dangerous. There was something inside me. Dad sighed impatiently. There's nothing inside you except paranoia and imagination. You heard exactly what we wanted you to hear. What? I whispered, feeling sick. Your mother and I knew about your little recorder from the start, he explained calmly. We found it immediately. Instead of confronting you, we decided to scare you off. Make you believe something impossible. But Caroline, my adoption, he scoffed, shaking his head again. Caroline is your birth mother. That part's true, but the rest was just lies to keep you away. We wanted you gone, out of our lives for good. My chest tightened painfully. What? You really want the truth? Dad stepped closer, his voice cold. Because you ruined our marriage. Your mother and I were happy until you came along. You drained our money, our patience, our joy. You were a burden. Caroline abandoned you, and we were foolish enough to take you in. I shook my head slowly. So you lied, faked everything, just to scare me off? It almost worked, didn't it? He smirked cruelly. But you kept coming back, digging deeper. The poison, the lake, fake conversations staged to terrify you. We thought you'd run, disappear. Suddenly, headlights flashed behind me. Turning quickly, I saw Mom step out, followed closely by Emma. Their faces were unreadable in the twilight. You knew about this too? I whispered, hurt stabbing deeply. Mom nodded coldly. It was our only option. You just wouldn't leave. Caroline tried coming back into your life. We panicked. It had to stop. Emma looked away, guilt etched in her face. They convinced me it was best for everyone. Best, Caroline shouted, stepping angrily from the shadows. You tormented him. Lied to him. You're monsters. Mom smiled bitterly. We're survivors. You abandoned him. We suffered for it. Caroline's voice shook with rage. I was young and scared. But you're evil. How could you? Dad shrugged calmly. It was easy. Fake some conversations, create a few unexplainable situations, and he'd think himself insane. You wouldn't believe how quickly fear takes hold. You're disgusting, Caroline spat bitterly. Maybe, Dad said smoothly, but effective. My head spun violently. Everything, my entire life, was built around their hatred. There was no supernatural force, no possession. Just cold, calculated cruelty. But suddenly, a quiet voice broke through. You're lying, Emma whispered, voice trembling. Everyone turned sharply. She stepped forward, face pale but defiant. You're not telling him everything, she continued softly. The money wasn't his fault. Your marriage failed long before him. Dad's gambling destroyed everything, not him. Emma, stop, Mom snapped sharply. No, she insisted firmly. He deserves the truth. The real truth. Caroline didn't abandon him. She fought for him. But you paid off lawyers, forged papers. You stole him from her. Lied for years to keep him. Dad glared angrily, voice shaking. That's enough. Emma ignored him, turning directly to me. The lake incident was real. They were desperate. There's nothing supernatural, but their hatred was real. They wanted you dead, so they staged accidents. When that didn't work, they staged the recordings, hoping you'd leave. My knees felt weak. Caroline stepped beside me, protective and determined. You destroyed his life, Caroline said coldly. Now you face the consequences. Dad laughed bitterly, stepping forward aggressively. You think you have power here? Suddenly, red and blue lights flashed in the distance. Multiple police cars pulled up quickly, officers stepping out swiftly. Emma turned, nodding toward them. I called them earlier. Told them everything. About your attempts, threats, everything. It's over. Mom stared, horrified. Dad cursed angrily under his breath. Officers approached quickly, arresting both parents calmly. Emma stood beside me, voice quiet but steady. I should have done that years ago. Officers led Mom and Dad away, leaving us in stunned silence. Caroline wrapped an arm gently around my shoulder. You're safe now, she whispered softly. Emma stepped closer, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you. It's over, I whispered, barely believing the words myself. But as police cars pulled away, leaving us alone beside the quiet lake, another car appeared slowly down the dark road. It parked quietly, engine off. A tall, unfamiliar man stepped out slowly, approaching cautiously. I hope I'm not too late, he called softly. I tensed instantly, exhausted from betrayal and surprises. Who are you? He smiled sadly, stepping closer. I've been looking for you a long time. Caroline never mentioned me. Probably thought I wouldn't want to meet you. Caroline stared, breathless. You're... He nodded gently. Your father. Your real father. I had no idea you even existed until recently. I spent years looking for you. They hid you well. My knees buckled, tears blurring my vision. You've been searching? Every day, he whispered warmly. I wanted you. Caroline did too. They stole you from us. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. I thought you'd never forgive me. He shook his head softly. We were young. I forgave you years ago, but I never stopped searching. Emma stepped forward slowly. Are you telling the truth? He nodded sincerely. Absolutely. Standing there, Facing my real parents together for the first time, my heart filled with relief and hope. The nightmare of lies, hatred, and betrayal finally faded away. But deep down, a small, nagging voice lingered. I glanced back toward the lake, memories stirring uneasily. For just a moment, the surface seemed darker, colder, like something waiting patiently beneath. Then Caroline's gentle voice pulled me back. "Let's go home." Nodding slowly, I turned away from the lake, choosing warmth over darkness. Yet, as we drove away, I glanced once more toward the silent, waiting water. Nothing supernatural, no possession, no mystery. But somehow, deep inside, I knew my nightmare wasn't completely over yet. Well, that's it for today. Don't forget to comment your thoughts on the matter, and I will see you in the next one.